want to discuss two propositions. The first is that the internet is really, really weird, is deeply, deeply strange, odd, and weird, and that it, in fact, is completely familiar. And you need that second one. I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about the first one, that it's odd. But the second one, you need to say something like that. The internet is also incredibly familiar and home-like, because you have to be able to explain how it is that 1 billion people, over the course of just a few years, adopted this completely odd, weird, strange technology with barely a hiccup and with no training. Nobody got trained on how to use a web browser. We just figured it out. And so 1 billion people went into this environment, into this, what I think technically is a world, and felt at home. And not just at home, but really enthusiastic about it. So in the interest of stressing the oddness of it, I want to begin by looking at a really simple question that you would have thought we would have solved, would have answered years and years ago. And in fact, it's been argued ever since the web started taking off. The question is, some people say that the internet is a place where we celebrate diversity, where we run into points of view that are unlike ours, and we dance for the joy of it. We're becoming far more diverse because of it. And yet, other people say the exact opposite, that the internet is making us less open to change, that it's causing us to hang out only with people with whom we agree, and we spend all of our time mutually reinforcing, and so we're becoming less and less open. This is a complete disagreement, an utter and complete disagreement, and we have made no progress on resolving this. None. It's because you'd have to know so much. So part of what stimulates this, and I'm sorry this is so washed out, this is light acting as interference and noise in what you see, right? But this is a map of the internet. People produce maps of the link structure of the internet, and you see that there are big clusters, a few big clusters, and then lots of little ones going in, and they look at this and they say, well, the big clusters are people who agree, and they're big clusters because so many people are linking to it, so it's people in these echo chambers. So you have to look at these maps, but then you have to decide, well, okay, now we know what the link structure is, but how does the information actually flow? Because links are static, right? But how does the information, who's influencing who here? That's the first thing. And second of all, those maps don't tell you anything about the reading habits. Sure, those are where the links are, but where are people spending their time? Maybe they're checking in for 5 minutes at the big sites, and then going off and wandering in diverse fields. We don't know. You'd have to know about the reading habits. You'd have to know about the demographics of the people who are hanging out there, because maybe some people are hanging out and only talking to people like them, but maybe it's based upon that happens by topic. Maybe that's true for politics, but not true for everything else. Maybe it's true for celebrity gossip, but not true for politics. Maybe it's true for right-wing politics, but left-wing, they are diverse. We don't know. We'd have to know all of that. We don't know any of that. And then once we knew that, we'd still have to have something to compare it to. Let's say we answered those questions. We would still not know, because we wouldn't know whether this is more or less diverse than life before the internet, life off the internet. What's the baseline? Do you look at the op-ed pages of a newspaper and say, this is our model of diversity? Maybe, but at least in the US, the diversity of opinion on an op-ed page runs all the way from forest green to slightly darker forest green. That's about as much of the spectrum as you get covered. So how do we measure if we knew what the diversity, the encounters with diversity were like on the web, how do we contrast it to say whether it's better or worse than it was? And why do we insist that this has to be a comparison to the media? That makes an assumption about what the internet is, that it's a type of publishing medium. And suppose it's not. Suppose it's, for example, a type of conversation. And suppose Google Maps had an extra button all the way at the top that, in addition to street level, was listen, so you could actually listen in to the actual conversations, not the typed ones, but the oral conversations, and you could hear all of it. What sorts of things are we talking about? Are those echo chambers? Is that what we're comparing it against? How do we get an answer to this question? And furthermore, those who complain that the internet is a set of echo chambers, even if they're right about it, even if we go all the way down and they're right about it, well, okay. So what is conversation supposed to be? Should we be disappointed that people who are in agreement, basic agreement, continue to discuss with one another? If you're disappointed, then you must have a model of conversation that says that real conversation, valuable conversation, is only conversation among people who disagree. And that conversation in this model is how we change our minds. But that never happens. We don't do that. When was the last time you changed your mind about anything significant? I would say probably never. So that model of conversation itself goes deeper into our notion of what we think it is to be human together, and the role of rationality. You know, we can't answer these questions because we have to answer. We can't answer the big question because we'd have to answer this huge list of ever-deepening questions that take us all the way down to the roots about what we think we're doing when we're talking with one another. That's how deeply odd the internet is. That's how deep the internet is, that the questions that it raises, even the simplest of questions, are we more or less diverse than we were before, drive us all the way back to the roots of Western philosophy. And that's why we have so much trouble answering simple questions like these. The internet is weird, and it's profoundly weird. So in order to see the way in which the net is different, is odd, is weird, I think we have to look at the context it's coming out of. And I want to point to three, very briefly, three alienating contexts that pre-exist the internet and against which the internet not only has to be measured, but against which we experience the internet. And the first, these are all obvious. The first is that, well, we're coming out of an age of broadcast, and not just broadcast TV, but any one-to-many medium, including book publishing, where one person speaks and the rest of us get to listen. And that's, that's pretty deep in our culture. We've come to expect that. It, of course, obviously treats us as passive, but not just as passive recipients. It's also very much, the broadcast media are very much somebody else's. The content that comes to us may be wonderful content, may be dribble, may be wonderful. Either way, it's not ours, it's theirs. It's something they have given us, and so it's an alienated content. But I'm not arguing against it, I'm just saying this is the media itself are alienating. And now, of course, this is being supplanted by, enhanced by user-generated content, the YouTubing, where we not only get to watch what other of us, this is our content, and a lot of it is absolute dribble, and some of it is insanely beautiful. But it's ours either way. It's ours, it's what we did. Not only that, we get to comment on. We get to leave a comment and to post another video that plays off of that one. We get to redo it and remix it. It is ours. And it's not simply even the content that's ours or the comments that are ours. Most importantly, I think, it's that YouTube exists as, and this is true more generally as well on the internet, it exists as a recommendation engine. We recommend to one another. So if you watch the kids watching YouTube, they're around their computer, they're laughing, because usually it's something, oh, that's amazing, that's funny, and then the next person says, oh no, you gotta see this one, and then they go to the next one. Oh yeah, that's just like, and here's one even better. And they're doing what we essentially do with jokes, which is we top one another, we point out, we make references to, and we gain social standing because of our ability to remember the right joke, to be funny, or to point to the interesting YouTubes. This is an intensely social activity.